Hey everyone, this is Spencer and welcome back to my shop. If it's your first time stopping by, I appreciate you taking the time to check me out. If you haven't seen before, we're messing with a Z50R right here. I've been doing a lot of work on this thing. I got the rear end set up last time and made a chromoly swing arm for it. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. I thought it was pretty cool. I've got some big plans for this bike, but I'm trying to get myself a rolling chassis that's ready to go. The only thing I have left to do really to accomplish that is do some modifications on the front forks. Today I'm going to be shortening the front forks by around a half an inch to keep my travel and my ride height where I want it to match the rear end that I built. So we'll get started on that and I'll kind of show you guys what's going on as we go. If you've never worked on a set of conventional forks before, I hope this will help you. And if you're building a custom bike, maybe this will help you make your life a little bit easier when it comes to modifying these kinds of forks. I made a very basic cutaway drawing of a conventional fork and how it functions. Basically, you have a spring right here, and then you also have a damping rod that goes through the top tube and connects down at the bottom of the fork leg. Basically what happens is when the fork compresses, it compresses your fork spring right here, and it forces the oil that's sitting in this bottom leg through these holes and out of the top of the piston. Now, as the fork retracts or extends back to its normal resting length, it will force the oil back through these holes, making them your rebound holes right there. So you can adjust the damping of these forks by changing that hole size, making it smaller. The smaller ones up top will make the rebound slower, and by making them smaller down here at the bottom, it'll make it stiffer on the compression stroke. Now there is a top out spring right there to keep the forks from extending back and there being a hard metal on metal contact right there. When I add my spacer in to actually drop the forks and make them a little bit lower, I'll be adding it on top of that top out spring, but I need to make sure that I'm not covering one of those rebound holes up. I'll go ahead and take the forks apart and I can explain a little bit further if I think I missed something. I already removed the spring via the fork cap and let the oil drain out of both of my forks overnight so I wouldn't make a big mess messing with them. To remove this socket head cap screw that's actually holding the fork together, all I did was, after draining the oil, I put the spring back in and I put the fork cap back in very loosely. All that I'm going to do is slide an axle through the lug right here and push down on this thing on the ground with a rag so I don't scratch up my fork cap. And then I'll just bump it with an impact wrench and it'll come right out. This has always worked for me. I'm sure there's other ways to do it, but this is the easiest way that I've found. I'll just push down on it using the axle so I have some extra leverage, and that's basically all there is to it. Now the fork will just come apart. You can see the damping rod right there, and you can see how nasty this oil is. Some of these conventional forks will actually have a like a Teflon coated slider inside of here. So if they do, it won't slide apart quite so easily. What you'll have to do is remove the dust seal, and there'll be a circlip up underneath there that's holding the fork seal in place. And then you'll just have to give it a few, pretty hard yanks, and then the fork seal will come out. But these don't have that, as you can see, so they just come right apart. And now I can take the rest of it apart and make my spacers to lower the forks. I had a piece of nylon just laying around that fit the build for what I was looking for. And nylon's a good material to use because it's pretty hard and very wear resistant. So I am just punching a hole in it in my lathe and parting it off to the correct length. You can see I'm catching it with a little Allen key just so I don't have to fish around through my chip pan and try to find where I put it. Made myself one extra just in case I screwed one of them up, which there's always a possibility of, so just save myself some time. I'll take it over to my mini lathe where I'll do the finish machining on it. This thing's pretty accurate for how cheap it is, so it works out pretty good. Now that I have both of my spacers made, I can check my fitment by putting the forks back together and putting them on the bike and making sure that everything is as I thought it should be. As you can see, they just slide up on here. I made them a pretty snug fit so they wouldn't vibrate around, and the top out spring goes right there. And as I mentioned before, my hole is not being covered up by the bushing. Obviously I have plenty of room right here, so that's good. That's just one thing to look out for. I do realize when I'm making these videos that I have a tendency to use some equipment that you may not have access to at home, but I wanted to make this video in particular because anybody can actually do this at home with very simple tools. When I was younger, I used to swap front ends onto other pit bikes that I had that didn't belong, and I would have to adjust the ride height the same way. I would just go down to my local hardware store and pick up some PVC pipe and cut it to the length that I needed and drill a hole in it to the correct size to where it would slip over the damping rod, you know, just like I did with these. Now that I do have some fancier equipment, it can be a little bit more critical about it, getting my length perfect and everything, but just to let you know, you can do this modification at home. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to. One more thing that I did that I didn't cover in the video since the last time is I took my swing arm off and fabricated just a little steel bracket in the corner right there and 3D printed this nylon chain slider. From my understanding, the stock Z50Rs didn't come with a chain slider. Since I have more travel in the rear, there's a good chance my chain is going to be contacting the swing arm right there, so I'm going to have to add a roller to the frame on the bottom side, but I think that turned out pretty good. After just slipping the forks back together loosely, I still have to Cerakote the legs, so I wasn't worried about putting the seals back in and filling it up with oil and everything. I still got some more work to do before I get there, but I wanted to get my ride height correct, so I did the lowering spacers like I showed you and put them back on the bike and pulled it off of the stand and just sat on the thing, made sure it was sitting the way that I wanted it to with the swing arm that I made. I also made the chain slider as well. I think my next step is going to be putting the engine in this thing. I'm gonna make another pedestal for my stand here to mount to the lower part of the engine cases where the peg mount goes, and that should jack it up off the ground with the engine in it, make it a little bit easier for me to build the exhaust system for it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If this is your first time stopping by and checking out my videos, I appreciate it. Please check out my other ones if you haven't seen them. We're going to start getting to the fun stuff next. I'll have the engine in here. The engine won't be completely built or anything. It'll still be kind of nasty and whatnot. I like to build engines last because everything will be off getting powder coated and all that fun stuff, so I'll have time to build the engine. But I want to put the engine in there and mock it up so I can get my carburetor fitted, work on my airbox setup, whatever I decide to do there, and then get to the fun stuff like building a gas tank and the exhaust. But I hope you'll stop by and check me out again down the road. Thanks for watching.